Hi, I'm Ryan Alexander, and I'm president of Taxpayers for Common Sense, and thank you for coming here today for the unveiling of the new Green Scissors report. We have a giant copy and copies for you, and just because we need to show you that we're going to take green scissors to the federal budget. This report outlines almost up to $380 billion in savings that could be achieved by getting rid of projects that are both wasteful to taxpayer dollars and harmful to the environment. For more than 16 years, the Green Scissors report has identified these programs, and we think this moment, this year, is a time where we have a unique opportunity to really make a difference and advance the ideas behind Green Scissors. With the super committee kind of going into action and starting to look for a set of up to $1.5 trillion in cuts over 5 years, we want to emphasize the approach that we take in the Green Scissors approach. This is a document that was written by Taxpayers for Common Sense. We're a national federal budget watchdog. We've been around for 16 years. Friends of the Earth, which is not represented here today, but is a progressive national environmental organization. The Heartland Institute that Eli Lehrer, the vice president, will be talking from the perspective of the Heartland Institute, but they're a free market think tank, and Public Citizen, a longtime consumer watchdog founded by Ralph Nader. This is not a set of groups that agree on that many things all that often, but we can agree on all of these cuts. And if we look at the last several months politically with all the agreement that in fact we do have a problem with the size of our debt, we do have a problem with our habitual problems of deficit spending, there's agreement that there's a problem there, but there's very little agreement elsewhere. We think it's important to come together, show that there are some common sense cuts that can be made. I'll highlight a few different categories and then let Eli talk, and also Jennifer, I forgot your last name, from the Illinois Environmental Council will talk from the environmental perspective. We have a bunch of different kinds of subsidies highlighted in here. There's direct spending, there's direct support for projects like some of the clean coal programs that are in here. There are tax expenditures like the oil and gas tax cuts that those industries have gotten for, in some cases, up to 100 years. There are financing mechanisms like loan guarantees and insurance programs like flood insurance, which Eli can talk more about. And agriculture commodities subsidies, again, direct spending by the federal government, that's out of the mandatory budget. There's all sorts of areas in the federal budget where you can find spending that's environmentally harmful and wasteful to the taxpayers. And we want to make sure that not just the super committee members, but kind of every member of Congress knows that we are serious about looking for ways to save the taxpayer dollars and do something good for the environment. I'll take questions at the end, but I want to hand it over to Eli to talk about why Heartland's participating and some of the specific cuts in the report.
Thank you very much, Ryan, and thank you all for coming here today. The Heartland Institute is new to the Green Scissors Coalition this year, and we have joined because we see ourselves as a free market group, a group that believes in small government, but also a group that cares deeply about our natural environment. The theme of this report, if I had to find one, is quite simple. Not only can government spending be wasteful, not only can government spending be harmful, but government spending can also hurt people directly. Government spending can damage our natural environment. We have found over $1/3 of $1 trillion in spending that is actually harmful to our natural environment. Let me speak just for a minute about two programs in my own area of specialty, insurance. The flood insurance program and the crop insurance program. Both of these programs are massively subsidized, poorly run, government-managed programs that were intended to improve the environment, that were intended to make things better for people, that were intended to improve risk management. Both of them have failed utterly. In both cases, taxpayers, the budget, and the environment would be better off if government were simply to get out of the way. That's the message of this report. Government spending is not good by itself. Government spending can hurt the environment. This report shows some of the particular harms that government spending does to the environment. Heartland is grateful and proud to participate. We're pleased that we've found so much common ground in riven political times. And as such, we believe that the Green Scissors agenda can and should make an enormous difference in cutting and reducing the enormous, burdensome federal budget deficit. Thanks so much.
scissors? Yeah.
Great, thank you. My name is Jen Walling. I'm the Executive Director of the Illinois Environmental Council. Our organization serves as the eyes, ears, and voice of the environmental community in Springfield. And I feel privileged to be here today to applaud these groups for their work on this very important report. These are groups that, you know, as folks have said, we don't normally see working together on a lot of issues, but this is something that there is a lot of common ground between groups. You know, just looking at how government could become more efficient and help the environment, keep our air clean, our water clean, preserve natural space. You know, these are all really critical goals that this report discusses that these programs aren't accomplishing. You know, when we've looked at this in Illinois, you know, we're facing similar issues with our budget in Illinois, and this is a report that I hope our legislators in Illinois will read and take to heart, and I encourage them to look at the Green Scissors approach for our state budget as well. Thank you so much to the organizations involved in this. This is a very critical report.
If there's any questions, we're happy to take questions and or get into more detail on the report.
Yeah, can you give some examples of the types of customers?
Sure. Let me give you a couple examples and then I'll let Eli go through some examples. When we categorize the different areas in the report around energy, agriculture, transportation, land and water, and we've also talked a little bit about some things that have happened recently that should show that there are some signs of progress. In energy, there are lots of subsidies for conventional fossil fuels that we've heard about this summer. There's been some debate about oil and gas subsidies, and lots of those are detailed here. There's accounting treatment that the oil and gas company is allowed to use that lowers their tax rate. There are specific deductions for certain types of, for the intangible drilling costs, something that only goes to oil and gas companies. There's lots of financing mechanisms in here. The one that I want to highlight is the loan guarantee program from the Department of Energy. It's a program that at Taxpayers for Common Sense, we oppose the entire program. We think it's poorly run and there are not enough protections in there for the taxpayers. The vast majority of the money in that goes to nuclear energy and coal projects. These are very, very capital intensive projects that can't get capital on the free markets right now. And so they're looking for loan guarantees, and these are from the federal government. These look like they're cheap to the taxpayers because they're just a loan guarantee. It's not necessarily a direct outlay. But when no one on Wall Street will lend you money, and you have to come to the federal government to guarantee that, let's just remember when this guarantee program was started, 2005. Not a time when Wall Street was particularly shy about giving money out the door. That's just a recipe for loss for the taxpayers. And given that it's going to nuclear power, which is an industry that really can't survive without federal support, and has so many downstream polluting concerns for us as we see the, you know, the horrible, horrible costs, human and financial, to the disaster in Fukushima earlier this year, that's an area where I think all the groups at the table were very concerned. If you look at agriculture, there's commodity crop subsidies, which encourage bad land practices and also just cost a lot of money. The market access program is something that allows, again, for corporate interests to get marketing assistance for selling their crops overseas. It encourages behavior that wouldn't necessarily take place without this kind of subsidy. And I'm going to let Eli go into more detail on crop insurance, but I think in some ways it's kind of a silent subsidy. It's a huge subsidy for farmers. We provide 60% insurance on crops right now, and that has meant that many lands that otherwise would be seen as too expensive to put in production because of the inputs you put into them in terms of pesticides are now in production. So I'll let Eli talk a little bit more about that and about flood insurance maybe.
Great, thank you so much. These subsidies included in this report, many of them are subsidies that environmental groups have and will continue to consider as clearly subsidies for polluters. But just as many subsidies sold as being green, sold as being good for the environment, are actually tremendously harmful to the environment. Some of these include the subsidies for ethanol, which are enormous. This is sold as a renewable fuel. It's our biggest renewable fuel subsidy by far. And many things that are sold as green, including ethanol, do tremendous damage to the environment. Then, of course, the insurance programs. These are some of the last things that government should be running. The crop insurance program has a direct cost to taxpayers of $6.5 billion a year. It's over $32.5 billion over 5 years. It is a mess. It encourages industrial agriculture in places where it simply should not happen, and encourages development of lands that would otherwise be wilderness. The flood insurance program, which currently owes Treasury $18.5 billion and has no way to pay it back, is a similarly flawed program sold as an environmental benefit. It simply does not work, and instead serves to subsidize the development of wetlands and other environmentally sensitive areas. These are the sorts of things, even if sold as green, even if sold as being as good for the environment, are in fact tremendously harmful, not only to our pocketbooks, but also to the planet we live on. Thanks.
Can I ask you, Eli, aside from the environmental aspect of that, with the corn, the crop insurance, I guess, the argument's also made in the report that it's the bigger companies, those big, large ag companies, that benefit more than mom and pop still working the land.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. You don't get handouts from Congress if you're a small entity with very little or no power. The handouts go to the big boys. The handouts go to the most profitable companies that can hire the best and most powerful and most connected lobbyists. That's who's getting these handouts. The handouts aren't going to small business. They aren't going to preserve the family farm. Instead, they're going to the stockholders of some of the largest and most profitable companies in the world.
Can someone speak to coal and future gen? That's something you have in here, and it's obviously a big deal to the state of Illinois.
I was going to say, I was going to defer to Jennifer since she's from Illinois, but I can talk a little bit about that. I mean, I think Future Gen is again, it's an example of a project that has benefited from excellent political patronage and not necessarily excellent technological advances. I mean, essentially, the coal industry is a very mature industry. If it's going to evolve and become, maintain its position as our primary fuel for electricity, it needs to pay for that evolution. Our position is essentially this is a mature and profitable industry. We don't need to be paying it to come into the modern world and make their fuel less polluting. And Future Gen and some of the clean coal technology subsidies, including CCS, which is something that addresses some concerns of coal, but not the whole life cycle of environmental concerns of coal, but is just putting money into the coal industry's pocket to help them evolve and stay current in the business world. And we think that that's something that they should do for themselves.
But until we get further along with renewable energies, isn't it part of the government's responsibility to make sure that whatever we can do with coal or other kinds of even nuclear stuff, to make sure that they clean up their act, and in doing so, that maybe it takes some government help to make sure that there are certain standards met when it comes to polluting?
I was going to say, just as a starting point, and I'll let Eli fill in, just to, what's in this report is what all four groups agree on. That kind of question of exactly what the government's role is in making that transition from a purely fossil-based kind of fuel economy to a clean economy, there's not total agreement on how we would get there from these groups. I think that said, I think there is agreement that for the externalities of the traditional fossil fuels, that's something they should start picking up the cost themselves. I'll let Eli.
I would answer your question even more simply. No, the government does not have a role in doing applied research of any sort. If you're doing applied research or product development, that's something that should be driven by the private market. The government certainly has some role in doing basic research and understanding the fundamental laws of the universe. But when it comes to developing products, what besides Tang has the government invented that we actually use day to day? And I don't even like Tang. The government is not good or proficient at developing products. That should be left to the private sector, period.
And I'll address this one a little bit with the Future Gen project. I mean, as you know, Illinois will be seeing at least 3 new coal plants from the Illinois legislature within the next few years between Leucadia, Power Holdings, and Future Gen. And we definitely have some concerns about subsidizing sequestration technology that we don't know whether it works or not yet. And one of the goals that we've had in Illinois, and we've worked very hard to do with the renewable portfolio standards, is that, and energy efficiency portfolio standards, is we've worked to have renewable energy and efficiency in Illinois that meets market pricing. And some of these, even the new coal plants, are far above market prices right now. You know, so that's just another with the subsidization of these clean coal technologies that's a concern to us when, you know, we really have these emerging renewable energy technologies that can be at market price. So, thank you.
And so some of these subsidies, like we're talking about coal, or some of these subsidies, and then that may go towards R&D on something like this, right? So are we saying that these companies are well established enough that they can take care of paying for their own R&D, and the government shouldn't be footing that bill? I mean, is that kind of the bottom line here with some of this?
I mean, I think, again, in the report, we talk about kind of the reports in here, everybody agrees on it. And in terms of the partners in the report, there's absolutely, just to speak for Friends of the Earth, you know, they would absolutely say there should be federal investment in renewable technologies that's clearly renewable, that's clearly going to have environmental benefit, that is effective in many ways. There are plenty of examples of subsidies in here that look like they're green but aren't effective. The renewable hybrid energy tax credit is a good example. I think Eli's pretty clearly stated the position of Heartland of, no, you should not pay for applied research. And we fall a little bit in the middle of that there. In the energy sector, I think, you know, a level playing field would probably be the best situation. We don't expect that to happen, so we go after the oldest and most established subsidies first. So if you're a long-standing industry that's on your own 2 feet, then you have no excuse for continuing to get these subsidies. We're skeptical of new subsidies because they haven't been effective.
You guys target the Corps of Engineers, and in particular the Upper Mississippi River Locks, that whole project. I think the report says that, you know, barge traffic's down. I think barges are still pretty big along the Illinois and Mississippi rivers here. I don't know what
the Army Corps of Engineers is a notoriously politically driven and ineffective agency. I think a lot of the projects on the Upper Miss, and I think Eli probably has a little more substantive depth on this than I do. I'll let him answer it. But they're simply not projects that are necessarily being funded because they're doing what the policy goals are. They're funded because they have good political patronage, because they're doing that. The Inland Waterways Trust Fund, for example, they're now trying to shift, instead of having that a cost share with the barge owners, they want to shift all that cost to the taxpayers. And yes, barges are still used to transport things, but transporting goods is part of the cost of doing business, and we want to see businesses carry that.
The Corps really has no good system for determining the cost benefit of anything it does anywhere. If you had to pick one government program that is the most random and most destructive to the environment, I would probably single out the Corps, although it has a lot of competition. Virtually any Corps project, we don't really know whether or not they're beneficial or not. These projects seem egregious. In fact, the specific Corps projects listed in the report are just a representative sampling. We could throw a dart at a list of Corps projects, and we'd probably find a reason to decide that it was environmentally harmful and wasteful to subsidize whatever the Corps is doing.
the argument could be made that private industry often does things better than the government, right? So when it comes to these river locks, or these dams, or the locks and dams, okay, along the Mississippi River belongs to whom? The people. So who do you want responsible for those projects? So if they may be necessary.
There is, certainly when it comes to the Corps, there is a kernel of public purpose in what the Corps does. Certainly there is some reason why you should have a government role in doing this. The way the Corps has evolved, the way that it's run, the way that it works, it is totally ineffective at either giving us a functional inland waterway system, controlling floods, or doing anything else it's supposed to do. So certainly I'll acknowledge there is some government role in doing these things, but the current way we do it is so bad and so dysfunctional that it just gotta change.
Can you talk a little bit about the, because this is a little bit of a strange bedfellows kind of coalition. I don't think the Friends of the Earth and Harlan Institute would find each other sitting in the same booth at a diner very often, yet you've come together on this issue. I wonder if each of you can talk about how that process happened and what you may have learned or the experience of working together.
I can start. So I'm with Taxpayers for Common Sense. We've been part of the Green Scissors Project from the beginning. So for 16 years, we've worked with Friends of the Earth on Green Scissors reports. In the past, we've had other partners, consumer organizations. This year, we were really excited to bring on Heartland and Public Citizen to kind of round out the coalition. We do a lot of strange bedfellows coalitions at Taxpayers for Common Sense. That's kind of what we do. We have, we could do another press conference on defense cuts and why defense contractors actually cost more money than government employees sometimes. So we do a lot where we look for those kind of bringing strange bedfellows together, look for common sense reports, look for things that outside of the Beltway are, points of agreement. It's only in the Beltway and the kind of halls of money and politics power that they become so controversial. But I'll let Eli talk about kind of his experience working in this. This is the first year of our
Heartland also, particularly in our Washington office, works very hard to join strange bedfellows coalitions, and in fact, we're already in another coalition of which TCS is also a member. So the fact is that good policy is good policy. People may approach it from different angles. People may think about it differently, but things that make sense simply make sense. And groups with a variety of different ideologies, with a variety of different ideas about what the proper role of government is, can and should work together when they can. And that's why we've become part of this coalition, and that's why Heartland is particularly proud to be part of this coalition.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.